Jungle Book. Yes, it is time that we look back into one of Walt Disney's greatest classics, a film that over the years left a tremendous mark in both animation and film history. In fact, this is the feature that resulted in what many say is the only Disney live-action remake so far that is actually worth watching. But the biggest significance with The Jungle Book is that this is Walt Disney's swan song in terms of animated features. After years of shifting his focus onto either his theme park or his television programs, he decided to get back into his beloved medium and give those films his magic touch that people felt had been missing in his past movies like The Sword and the Stone. The team did feel that the old spark came back while creating their take on Rudyard Kipling's classic, but unfortunately, Walt Disney passed away just as they were close to completing the picture. It was emotionally tough for everyone, but Walt's most trusted animators decided to dedicate their boss by finishing up the movie and present the world with Walt's final love letter to animation. I could talk more about the movie's history, but I've already made a whole documentary about Disney animation, so if you'd like to learn more, then go check that out. Anyways, now that we're going to take a look at Mowgli's trip to the Man Village, will we see how this movie is a part of many people's bare necessities of life? Or will I end up liking this as much as Shere Khan likes man? Let's find out. The story. Of course, as a Walt Disney picture, while it is based on the Mowgli stories in Rudyard Kipling's novel of the same name, this has almost nothing to do with the original book. In fact, when they started production, Walt Disney told them,
"Alright boys, here's what I want you to do. I want you to take this book and turn it into my next movie. But whatever you do, do not use this book to make the movie. Don't read it, don't open it, don't even look at it. You understand that? Perfect! Now if you excuse me, I'm gonna go and make an actual city." Hey, by the way, on a side note, I just want to know your thoughts on this. What do you think of the name Epcot?
As a result, the story that we got in this Jungle Book only focuses on the tale of Mowgli, where he reluctantly has to go back to the Man Village before Shere Khan gets to him first and tears him to shreds. One thing that is noticeable about the picture is that the story is not a high priority, because when you take a closer look at it, there's not actually a whole lot to tell. It really is just trying to get Mowgli back to the Man Village, but often gets interrupted by characters who sidetrack his path for either their own reasons or because the kid wants to avoid his responsibilities. This ultimately leads to the biggest problem of the feature, that it does lack a bit of a purpose for the narrative. Yes, we know the goal is to bring Mowgli back to his own kind, but it doesn't necessarily clarify why should this matter to the audience. At least with the novel, it is a coming-of-age story where Mowgli grows to understand who he truly is and where is his place in life as a man who grew up in the jungle. In the movie, however, Mowgli doesn't show any growth, there's no lesson he learns from the whole experience, it's all just trying to get through a bunch of characters that are in the way so that they could take a stubborn boy from point A to point B.
I hope Mowgli learned something from that experience.
Now, hold on, don't think that this is all just dumping on an old classic here. That's honestly my one and only big criticism with this film. Yes, the story itself is not all that great or compelling, but that doesn't mean that it isn't engaging. Thankfully, everything else in the movie picks up what the plot left behind and carried it all the way to the end so that you could still have a good time with the experience. You don't watch The Jungle Book because of the journey itself, you do it to meet the rambunctious characters that Mowgli comes across, to witness the crazy scenarios that they get themselves in, to have fun with the musical numbers, and let the animals show how they feel. I'll be getting to those individual elements a little later, but my point is that the film makes up for the lack of narrative with great execution to make this engaging. For the most part, it wants to give its viewers a good time and make sure that the personalities they meet are likable and easy for the audience to connect with, and have the jokes be able to give them a good laugh.
You will sound your trumpet 3 times.
Yes, sir.
Shh! Not now, soldier.
However, at the same time, as a Disney film, it knows very well how to play with emotions, and while a lot of it can give people a smile, it also knows how to put a more somber tone and have the situation feel serious, especially to emphasize how Shere Khan is a major threat that Mowgli should never come across. Maybe it's a hot take to say that the story is the Jungle Book's weakest point. Then again, I don't think there's even much of a story here to begin with. And yet, even with that issue, it doesn't hold the movie entirely back from being enjoyable to watch and delivering the audience a good time from the experience. The animation. As a Disney film for the 1960s, this was produced during the period where they started using the Xerox process, where instead of inking by hand, a machine would directly take the lines of the drawings and trace them onto the cells. It began very nicely to highlight the stylized look of 101 Dalmatians, but then it seemed a bit messy in The Sword in the Stone. The latter still had great animation, but those sketchy lines can feel like they can be all over the place.
Oh, hang it all! Hang it all!
In The Jungle Book, while there could be some times where it can have a bit of that sketch look, this is the one where it feels like the team is starting to get the hang of the Xerox process and developing scenes where they look cleaner than before. But regardless of how the cells were made, that comment is still relatively minor, and it still doesn't change how the movie presents some of the greatest examples of the Nine Old Men's master craftsmanship. With the help of Ken Anderson's character designs, which gives the animals a friendlier and more approachable look, their animation presents a great blend of their species and their personalities. As a movie set in the Indian jungle, the animals are presented as, well, wild animals, and their anatomy and their movements are still rooted in reality to show how their species is a significant factor to who they are. However, at the same time, the animators still leave plenty of room to be playful and strengthen their personalities where they can have their own creative and comical moments based on their capabilities. Of course, there's no better example of this than Frank Thomas and Ollie Johnston's unforgettable work on Baloo.
Hey, right on the button.
But it's also worth noting that other characters have that creativity in their movements too, like with Kaa and King Louie. Another component that makes the feature look beautiful is the backgrounds, all hand-painted to immerse audiences in the jungles of India. It does a great job to make the viewer feel transported into the world the team created, where it even has a little bit of its own history going on, where there are other areas in there like the ancient ruins and the man village, and using luscious colors to make the jungle look bright and lively, almost inviting in a way where you kinda get why Mowgli wants to stay. That is, if it weren't for the other animals.
We give up! Here he comes!
Whoa! Whoa! Catch me!
Also, one credit that I have to give to the picture is that it does supply some good action scenes. They don't happen a lot, but when they do, they have a solid fast pace to grab your attention throughout and can be quite intense, where it points out how dangerous the jungle can be, or to show that the things they say about Shere Khan is true.
You're trying my patience. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Of course, as an older Disney movie, it is worth noting that there are some moments that the team recycled from their older works. Some are quick, and others can be nearly an entire scene. Some may call it cheap, but it's a technique that Disney fans have known for decades, and it's at the point where we've accepted it as a charming quirk and fun to point out. One of the biggest reasons why this is often considered a classic is because of how this is one of Disney's most prominent examples of what they can do with animation. And even today, it is still among the highest standards that many wish to reach. The characters. As this is based on the Mowgli stories from Kipling's The Jungle Book, although very loosely, the movie is centered around Mowgli, The man cub who refuses to go back to where he came from, despite everyone telling him that he should since there's an evil tiger who's hungry for stupid boy meat. But the reason why I'm starting this off by immediately jumping into the lead is because there's a very interesting discourse going on with him. When discussions are brought up about which Disney character they hate the most, I noticed that there are some who would respond with Mowgli. On top of what I've mentioned how the growth aspect from the book is missing here, the reason why is because of how much of a brat he can be. He's always so stubborn that he wants to stay in the jungle and has completely no idea of the dangers that are around him. Not to mention that he doesn't have the means to protect himself and always depend on the help of others to save him. For the most part, all Mowgli does is complain that he doesn't want to go back to the man village.
I want to stay in the jungle. I'm not going. Oh, Baloo, I want to stay here with you. I'm staying right here. But you said we were partners.
Now, believe me, kid,
You're just like old Bagheera.
If I could put my piece on the topic, I honestly don't really agree that Mowgli's the worst. The way I see it, Mowgli is more of a realistic kid. He's like that one boy who refuses to go back to school after having the time of his life during summer vacation. A sentiment that I'm sure many can relate during their childhood. On top of that, Mowgli's role is meant more to be like an avatar, created for the younger viewers to imagine themselves as Mowgli, thinking if they'd meet up with these characters and having a good time with them. I do get why some people can't stand him, but then again, Mowgli's just a kid. And kids can legit be like that sometimes, where they can be difficult to handle and think of themselves as bigger than they actually are.
Run, friend, run!
Run? Why should I run?
But again, this is not about Mowgli or to see him get back to the man village. A major reason why people watch this movie is to meet all the other great personalities that inhabit this feature. It is true that due to the lack of having a real goal or having anything of substance to say, many of these characters are one-dimensional, where they show up in a scene or two doing their little shtick and then leave without much of a purpose. However, when they do show up, they make the most out of their scenes and have a moment where the actors have their time to shine to play up their personalities in order to immortalize their roles. Starting off with Mowgli's biggest allies, Bagheera is the strict and uptight aide who has the hardest time dealing with the man cub's attitude. However, there's no denying that he loves the kid. He knew him ever since he was a baby, and his intentions are always so that he could be safe from any harm. As for Baloo, he's like who Mowgli wants to be. He lives a carefree life where he does whatever he wants in the jungle and is often over his head where he's not the best at resolving conflicts. However, like Bagheera, he cares a lot about the boy too, which puts him in a real tough spot when he is faced with the reality of Mowgli's situation. I'll even say that both Bagheera and Baloo are probably the best characters in the film where we really see the depth of their personalities based on their relationship with Mowgli. What I consider to be the best scene of the film is when the two are chatting about why he has to go to the man village, highlighting their dynamic and their range of emotions.
Well, that's just the point. As long as he remains with you, he's in danger. So it's up to you.
Why me?
As for the other animals, they don't appear often and they don't contribute a whole lot, but they can be enjoyable when they appear, even if most of them don't come from the book. Such as Colonel Hadi, who's way too into his role as a military leader, Kaa, who wants to trick Mowgli into eating him, the Vultures are the Beatles-like singing group that wants to find something to do, and King Louie is the leader of the monkeys that wants to learn how to make fire. And then there's Shere Khan, the villain of the picture who aims to kill Mowgli. Some may say that there's not a lot about him. He's just a tiger that wants to kill humans. Then again, that's what makes him so menacing. For most of the picture, the characters build him up as a serious threat that should be avoided at all times.
He'll get Mowgli while he's young and helpless. Just one swipe and...
And by the time he does show up, His confidence and worryingly calm demeanor makes all of those tales true about him, and he wears them proudly like a badge. Even if he's just a man-killing tiger, he's a man-killing tiger! That still makes him quite a terrifying villain!
You're Shere Khan.
Precisely. Then you should also know that everyone runs from Shere Khan.
Maybe they aren't the best written characters, but this is the kind of movie where you'll be walking out with at least one that you'd consider to be your favorite. The songs. If you're watching this, then you most likely know who the Sherman Brothers are. The beloved duo that wrote several unforgettable songs for Disney, and their greatest animated example is the musical numbers of The Jungle Book. That is, except for one song, and it just so happens to be the film's most popular tune.
Look for the bare necessities, the simple bare necessities.
You see, songwriter Terry Gilkyson was supposed to provide the music for the film, but then quit when he realized that faithful adaptations are not Disney's specialty. As a result, they only kept one song that he wrote that fit well with what the team wanted to do. A fun and upbeat romp that encompasses Baloo's philosophy about how enjoying the simple things in life is all you need. This ultimately sets the standard of the film's musical numbers, where each song is entirely based on the character who's singing it and help emphasize their personalities to leave a bigger mark in the movie. And Disney picked the perfect guys to make those kinds of songs. There's Colonel Hottie's March that plays with the military theme and how the elephants feel about following him.
Oh, the aim of our patrol
Is the question rather droll?
for to march and drill over field and hill.
Then there's I Wanna Be Like You, that's a jazzy and lively tune where King Louie wants to be like a human. By the way, did you know that this counts as a villain song? Seriously, if you think about Louie's intentions with wanting to learn how to make fire, it's actually a lot darker than you may think. Seriously, this is probably the happiest song about wanting to commit arson.
I wanna be like you.
I wanna walk like you, talk like you.
Speaking of villain songs, there's Trust in Me, where Kaa hypnotizes Mowgli.
Trust in me, just in me.
Then we got That's What Friends Are For, a barbershop quartet where the vultures befriend Mowgli.
So you can see we're friends. We're friends in need and friends indeed.
And finally, there's My Own Home, where the girl that Mowgli encounters sings about her role in the family and her future, where she becomes a housewife and wants her daughter to do the same thing as what she's doing now. The way it's sung is very lovely, but I feel like the lyrics might not have aged well because she sounds like she's just accepting the bad stereotype that she ultimately belongs in the kitchen.
And I'll send her to fetch the water. I'll be cooking in the home.
The songs play a significant factor in making the movie fun to watch, with each number delivering its own unique flavor, but all with the same upbeat mood to leave audiences with a smile. It's no wonder how this is one of those soundtracks that Disney is still using in their playlist to this day. As the final animated film where Walt Disney gave his personal touch, he certainly ended off with something quite special. The 1967 animated version of The Jungle Book is one of Disney's definitive feel-good movies. It's not necessarily meant to revolutionize the art of cinema. It's the kind of film that you pop on so that you can have a good time with a more light-hearted version of Rudyard Kipling's Gang. Sure, there may not be much to admire in the writing, with barely much of a story and some animals that don't contribute much, but it makes up for it with beautiful animation, a cast of lovable characters with great voice talent behind them, and unforgettable songs that are guaranteed to bring you joy while watching it. Of course, with the significance that it has, it is a must-watch for any Disney or animation fan. But I'd also recommend to check it out if ever you want to watch something fun. Need a movie to lift up your mood or just want a moment of happiness? then put on The Jungle Book and you'll have a good time. And if you want a longer lasting good time, then subscribe to my channel and you can discover even more animated treasures that can make you happy. This may not be Kipling's The Jungle Book, but Walt Disney's The Jungle Book is still a classic in its own right.
Hey guys, this is Animat, and I want to start things off by giving out a huge thanks to Red Bandit, whose amazing support on Patreon allowed him to get some amazing rewards, including this one, where he got to ask me to review the Walt Disney classic, The Jungle Book. And what a fun movie it was. And I mean, I understand if some people may say that I got a little too critical on it, or if my rating is a little bit too low for something that is often considered to be an absolute animated classic, but that doesn't change that I had an absolute blast when watching it, and that I do completely understand why people love this movie, to the point where some would even go as far and say that it's one of their favorites. And there are some things that I do love about it as well. I still love to this day listening to the soundtrack, and as I said in the review, I absolutely adore the scene where Baloo and Bagheera had their own personal little chat while Mowgli was sleeping. Like, that thing is like a masterpiece in terms of character development, in terms of character building, and in terms of animation as well to show the emotion of the characters. So definitely is a fun-filled ride, and I really did enjoy my experience watching this movie. So, with all that said and done, it is now time that we are going to go and move on to the animation hat, onto our next review, in fact. And before I go and pick the next movie to review, I would just like to go and start things off by saying that if you guys would like to be like Red Bandit and you want to go and support my work and get some amazing rewards at the same time, including but not limited to watching my videos before anyone else, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you guys would like to go and if you want to go and suggest an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. Alright, so without further ado, let's go and pick our next one. Let's see what we got here. Ah, okay, there we go. I picked it! And so, the next review shall be... Oh. Oh, yes! Oh, my God! Yes! Oh, this is such a childhood classic of mine. Well, maybe not necessarily childhood classic, but oh my God, I remember when I was younger, I really enjoyed this. Okay, so, it looks like we do have a little bit of a smooth transition here. Although this movie is a little bit more recent. We're still gonna have another animated feature set in the jungle, but this time around it won't be from Disney. We're gonna see how DreamWorks is going to handle things when they put their cast of crazy animals in the wild, or specifically on a little island next to Africa.
He's hooked.
It was inevitable, Baloo. The boy couldn't help himself.